In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the Hourglass Variation quilt block, and we're going to be doing it by making quarter square triangles. It's part of my Block of the Month series, and if you'd like to join us, I'll put a link down below. We'd love to have you. But for now, let's get on and make our block. You can find a copy of these cutting instructions over on my website. I'll put a link down below. I also have a PDF pattern that you might like to purchase, and I'll put a link for that down below too. So on the wrong side of our A fabric that measures 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches squared, we're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. So I'm just going to take my ruler, line it up at the top and the bottom, and then when I'm happy, draw my line. Then what we're going to do is we're going to place our A and our B pieces right sides together. So I drew that line on the wrong side. Sorry, I should have said that. We want to line up all the edges on all four sides. And then when we're happy, I'm going to pop some pins in. Now I am making sure the pins are out of the way of my line because we're going to sew along it. So now we're going to sew along both sides of our drawn line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm using my 1/4 inch foot. I'm stitching at stitch length 2 and I'm using wonderful confetti thread. I'm going to start right before the edge and sew all the way along till I get to the other side. Coming off the edge, cutting my thread, and now I'll do exactly the same on the other side. Cutting the thread, removing the pins, and now we're going to cut. So now we're going to cut along our diagonal line, making 2 half square triangles. So I'm just going to place my ruler right next to that line that we drew and then cut. Now we're going to press. So now we're going to set our stitches and then open it up and press towards our B fabric. So I'm just going to give that a finger press, making sure there's no creases in there. And then when I'm happy, I'll press. And I'll repeat that for our second piece. On the wrong side of one of our half square triangles, we need to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner again. So I'm just going to place my ruler on top, line it up at the top and the bottom, and then when I'm happy, I'll draw my line. Then we're going to take our other half square triangle and we're going to place them right sides together, but we want to have it so that we've got the opposite fabrics facing each other. So I've got the A and the B fabric on this side and then the B and the A fabric on this side. So we're going to face them together. So you can actually feel the seams butting up against each other. It's like big nested seam there. And then when you're happy that they're sitting nicely, we can pop some pins in. I might pop one in right there and just open it up and check that I'm happy with how it's sitting there, approximately where I'll sew, and that's going to look great. So I'll pop another one in here. Okay, if you'd like to, you can pop more pins in, but now I'm going to sew along each side of my drawn line. Okay, removing our pins again, and if you'd like to, before we cut, we can open it up and check we're happy with how our seams are all sitting, and that looks perfect on that side. We can check on the other side, and that's looking great. So now what I'm going to do is cut along that diagonal line. So placing my ruler right up next to that drawn line again, and then cutting along the line. And now we've created our 2/4. I've missed a little bit there, so if that happens, don't panic. Just pop your ruler back down, line up all the edges and cut through. Now we've got our 2/4 square triangles, we're going to press them. So now we're going to set the stitches and we can press our seams however we like. I'm just going to press them over to one side, so I'm giving them a finger press and then I'll press. And I'll do the same for our second 1/4 square triangle. So now we need to square up our quarter square triangles so they measure 6.5 inches squared, and I happen to have a ruler that is exactly that size. What I'm going to do is place the diagonal line on my ruler right on top of my seams, and I've got like a little target spot there. I'm going to put that right in the center, and then I'm going to cut all the excess off all 4 sides. If you don't have a ruler that is 6.5 inches squared, all you need to do is the same thing, place your diagonal line on that seam there, but then measure out your 6.5 inches. So I'll trim both my blocks down now to my 6.5 inches. And I do have a rotating mat. They're not necessary, but they definitely do make life a little bit easier. And I personally love this OmniGrid one. It's my favorite one that you can buy. And I'll put a link down in the description below if you'd like to check them out. So now we're just going to place our pieces so they match our image above. And do just double check this. I know it's really simple, but it's easy to accidentally have, let's say, one of our quarter square triangles around the wrong way. Of course, you could decide you want to place yours differently, but if you're trying to do it exactly the same as this, do double check, because it's easier to fix it now than when it's all sewn together. Now what I'm going to do is sew row 1 together and then row 2 together. So I'll just place them right sides together, line up these edges here. I will pop in a couple of pins. Just to make sure everything's lined up nicely and it stays that way. Then I'll sew this one and do the same for this row. All the settings are the same, and I'm just starting right before the very edge there. When I come up to these seams, I just want to make sure that they're being sewn down in the direction that they were pressed. Then I'll do the same for the second set, or row rather. Now let's press. So now I've just placed them back down in the correct position. I'm just going to set the stitches, and then we're going to press the seams towards our solid C piece. So I'm just going to finger press and then press, and then the same on this side. Placing the rows back in the correct position, now we're going to sew along this seam. So I'm just going to place them right sides together. Find that center seam and nest the seams. So that's where one seam's pressing going that way, one seam's pressing going that way. We're going to butt them up against each other. And I like to just pop a pin in there. We can just also open it up and check it's creating a nice straight line, and that looks good. And now I'm just going to line up all the edges and pop some pins in. And if you want to, you could also pop an extra pin in the center. I'm not going to worry about it today. Now, when we're sewing along here, we've got stitches intersected. We want to make sure we're sewing right up to where they're intersected. But if we come past that point, we're going to lose our little point there. So just be careful of that. Okay, and then we can open it up and check that we're happy with how our center point is, and that looks pretty good to me. If you're happy, just move on, but if you're not happy, then I do suggest just unpicking the stitches and trying again. It only takes a minute, but that's not absolutely perfect, but I think it's good enough for me, so I'm going to move on. So now we're just going to set our stitches, and then I will just press that last seam open. This is personal preference. You can press yours however you'd like. It is a little bit fiddly getting in there to press it open. Okay, and then I'll give it a once over on the front. Isn't that lovely? And there we have our Hourglass Variation quilt block. Well, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're new around here, my name's Stacey. I'm so glad you joined us, and I'm going to put a link up above for a playlist with all the other blocks we've made so far this year. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.